tensions have erupted between India and Pakistan. The two nations, which have long held an uneasy ceasefire, often marred by skirmishes near disputed regions like Kashmir, have just exploded into direct military combat. India is raining down airstrikes. Pakistan is responding by shooting Indian warplanes out of the skies. It's the closest it's been in decades to a full-blown war erupting between the two nations. A war that could go nuclear. The world should fear a war between India and Pakistan if it reaches that terrible conclusion. And the reason is simple. In a nuclear war between these two massive nations, no one survives. How did it even get to this point? It all started toward the end of April, when a group of gunmen entered the Indian-administered region of Kashmir. That territory has long been disputed between India and Pakistan. It's home to a line of control that essentially divides Kashmir in two, with India and Pakistan both having portions that they control. In April, terrorists believed to have come from Pakistan crossed all boundaries in Kashmir to enter the resort town of Pahalgam. There they killed at least 26 people, most of them tourists. Senior officials said the attack saw 4 gunmen fire into groups of dozens of tourists, with the attacks taking place from close range. Dozens were injured in addition to the 26 confirmed dead, with most of the tourists the terrorists targeted being Indian. Omar Abdullah, who's the Indian-administered portion of Kashmir's main elected official, said this attack is much larger than anything we've seen directed at civilians in recent years. It also served as the spark that ignited a powder keg. India waited for almost 2 weeks for Pakistan to take action against whatever militant group spawned the gunmen. Pakistan denied involvement in the attack and called for a neutral investigation. But in India's eyes, Pakistan also wasn't doing enough to eliminate the many concentrations of terrorist groups in several regions of its territory. As it waited, India also took action that escalated the brewing conflict. The country's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, made a bold proclamation.
I say to the whole world, India will identify, track and punish every terrorist and their backer. We will pursue them to the ends of the earth. India's spirit will never be broken by terrorism. Terrorism will not go unpunished. Every effort will be made to ensure that justice is done.
India hoped that justice might have come at the hands of Pakistan itself. It didn't. In the weeks following the Kashmir attack, India revoked visas and expelled military advisors from its territory. It also put the Indus Water Treaty on hold, all in an attempt to pressure Pakistan into acting against the group that attacked Kashmir. Pakistan ultimately responded with reciprocal measures while declaring that the suspension of the Indus Water Treaty could be considered an act of war. That may have been hyperbole, but a much more serious potential act of war came when India took matters into its own hands. On May 6, India carried out a series of precision airstrikes inside Pakistan, Kashmir and other Pakistani-controlled territories. Those strikes were specifically targeted at militant groups, India claimed, rather than Pakistan itself. They were focused, measured and non-escalatory in nature, India claimed in a statement, while also adding that no Pakistani military facilities have been targeted. India was telling the truth when it came to military facilities. However, Pakistan claims otherwise when it comes to the impact India's strikes had on its civilian population. By the end of the assault, Pakistani officials reported that 26 civilians lay dead, with another 46 being injured. India's bombs were also reported to having struck at least one mosque, killing 13 people in the process, including a child. Pakistan had to respond. So far, that response has been limited to 2 distinct actions. Hours after India completed its strikes, Pakistan claimed to have shot down 5 of its enemy's fighter jets. Among them were a Rafale jet of French origin, in addition to a Su-30 fighter and a MiG-29, both of which are built by Russia. Pakistan also claims to have shot down at least 1 drone and several Indian quadcopters. India hasn't confirmed the loss of these aircraft. However, it can't deny what's happening at Kashmir's line of control. Pakistan has reportedly started shelling along that loose border, resulting in the deaths of 10 people and injuries to 48 more, according to a police official in Indian-administered Kashmir. Sky News also says there are now reports of firefights breaking out between Indian and Pakistani troops at multiple points along the line of control, suggesting that an already tense situation is on the verge of bubbling over. India and Pakistan had been here before, several times. Most recently, a 2019 attack on an Indian military convoy by a suicide bomber with links to Jaish-e-Mohammed, a Pakistan-based terrorist group, killed 40 Indian paramilitary soldiers. Pakistan denied links to the group, which claimed responsibility for the attack, and India accused Pakistan of providing shelter to such terrorists. Again, it carried out airstrikes. While there was no escalation beyond that at the time, the resulting tensions have brewed ever since. What's been seen in late April and early May is those tensions spilling over. Only this time, the terrorist attacks on Indian territory targeted civilians rather than military personnel. That's unprecedented. It's also worrying for the rest of the world. Why? India and Pakistan are both nuclear-armed military powers. If the situation between the two keeps developing as it is, they may enter a war that nobody will survive. Just how big is the nuclear threat posed by each country? Most reports say that India and Pakistan present similar levels of nuclear threat to one another. According to ABC, they have comparable nuclear arsenals. India has 172 nuclear warheads in its stockpiles. Pakistan lags, though not by much. It has 170 nukes. It appears the two have taken mutually assured destruction seriously by maintaining similar arsenals they could use to destroy the other if the situation calls for it. However, there is a slight disparity between India's and Pakistan's nuclear arsenals based on how each country can deliver its weapons. India has the clear experience advantage, having tested its first nuclear weapon back in 1974. Those tests made it the world's 6th nuclear-armed nation, with Pakistan following up to become the 7th around 2 decades later. In terms of nuclear delivery options, India owns Rafale, Mirage 2000HI and Jaguar ISIB aircraft, all of which combine to give it the ability to deploy 48 of its nuclear warheads from the air, according to the Arms Control Center. India also has ship-launched and submarine-launched ballistic missiles, namely the Dhanush and the K-15. The former has a range of around 217 miles, while the latter can travel for 466 miles. India is also developing a new submarine-launched missile, the K-4, which is believed to be capable of traveling up to 2,174 miles, more than enough to hit practically any target in Pakistan from the Indian Ocean or the Persian Gulf. As for land delivery, India operates 4 types of ballistic missile systems that combine it to give the ability to fire 64 nuclear warheads at Pakistan from its own territory. The most impressive of these are the Agni-2 and Agni-3, which have ranges of 2,174 and 3,106 miles respectively. More variations of these Agni models are in development, including a road mobile version, which could give India even more options in terms of where it strikes Pakistan. Speaking of Pakistan, it began nuclear weapons testing in 1998, and it's believed that most of its current stockpiles have yields in the 5 to 12 kiloton range. That puts it behind India, which has nuclear weapons reaching up to 40 kilotons of destructive power. Pakistan also falls slightly behind India when it comes to nuclear weapon delivery options. The country has F-16s, Mirage 3s and Mirage 5s, all of which are believed to be capable of firing both conventional and nuclear missiles. The Arms Control Center says this gives Pakistan the ability to launch 36 warheads from the air, fewer than India, but still plenty enough to cause some serious damage. The country is less capable when it comes to naval nuclear weapons. It's still testing its Babur 3, which is a sea-launched version of the Babur 2 missile. However, those tests haven't taken place for a submarine yet, meaning any naval launch could be anticipated by India before it happens. As for ground launches, Pakistan is believed to have at least 102 missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads, which are split across 6 ballistic missile groups. Most offer relatively short ranges, though Pakistan is working on the Shaheen 3 and Shaheen 1A, which will offer ranges of 1,708 and 559 miles respectively. All of this amounts to India having a slight edge, even if the size of its military arsenal is similar to Pakistan's. It can launch from submarines and has much more powerful ballistic missiles. But all of this is mitigated by the fact that India and Pakistan share a border. Each can easily hit the other, even if Pakistan can't quite reach the portions of India that are furthest away from that border. So the result would be simple if the two engaged in a nuclear war: mutual destruction. The question now is how extensive that destruction would be. There's actually a surprisingly detailed answer. Once news began emerging of the latest boiling over of tensions between India and Pakistan, a study into the two countries' nuclear capabilities emerged. This study, which was created in 2019, took an in-depth look at precisely what would happen on both the local and global scales if India and Pakistan engaged in nuclear war. The results make for difficult reading. The study, which eerily marked 2025 as the possible year for such a nuclear conflict to occur, suggests that an eventual nuclear war between India and Pakistan would start with the two countries mobilizing and deploying troops across the line of control in Kashmir. They're not quite there yet, however, shelling and fights are occurring across that border, so it's not too big a stretch to assume more deployments will come soon. In response to this heightened military action, Pakistani officials might panic, the study claims. They'd have a good reason to do so. Pakistan, though a powerful military nation in its own right, doesn't compare to the might of India in conventional warfare. India has over 800,000 more soldiers in its active military, along with twice the number of reserves available to Pakistan. It spends around $75 billion per year on defense, when Pakistan only manages about a tenth of that amount. Plus, India has Pakistan beaten in the air and sea, with hundreds more assets in both departments, plus more tanks and armoured vehicles. A conventional war between the two would still be long and drawn out, but Pakistan has terrible odds of winning. So, rather than wait for a conventional war to start, the 2019 study suggests that Pakistan might attempt to repel its Indian enemy by dropping 10 tactical nuclear weapons, each with yields of 5 kilotons. Each offers around half the power of the atomic bomb the US dropped on Hiroshima. However, rather than dropping those bombs on Indian territory, Pakistan would detonate them in the air close to its own border. The initial volley of nukes would thus serve as airburst used against Indian tanks and armoured vehicles. Pakistan might follow this initial attack with another, this time using 15 of its nukes, prompting India to respond. India's government would focus on Pakistani military targets, aided by the superior range of its ballistic missiles and greater range of delivery options available to it. A staggering 20 nukes would head from India to Pakistan, all detonating in the skies as airbursts that devastate Pakistan's major airfields and nuclear weapons depots. Immense fires would result, sending huge plumes of smoke into the skies. The reasons that response would have ramifications for the rest of the world will be covered shortly. For now, the 2019 study speculates that India's retaliatory nuclear strike wouldn't stop Pakistan. It struck first, and it can't stop now, with the next day seeing Pakistan retaliate with its own airburst nuclear strikes over key Indian airfields, garrisons, and nuclear weapons depots. India hits back with more nuclear attacks against Pakistan's air, naval, and army bases, which brings the nuclear war into urban areas. By this point, each side is too far gone to stop. They both expend the rest of their arsenals, potentially striking 250 urban targets between them over just a few days. The death toll would be massive. By the end of the war, Pakistan and India would lie in ruins, with the two combining to lose between 50 and 125 million of their people. Precisely how many, the study claims, depends on the yields of the nuclear weapons launched. The higher the yields, the more people will die. The societies of both countries would practically collapse, taking decades to recover if they ever managed to recover at all. Several major cities would be destroyed, with nuclear fallout making them uninhabitable, and millions of survivors would have to struggle along with injuries due to the sheer devastation wrought against key infrastructure such as roads and hospitals. In short, the nuclear war between Pakistan and India would be a nightmare, and that's only on the domestic front. Globally, the nuclear war would have far-reaching consequences that directly or indirectly lead to the deaths of hundreds of millions of people, even if no other nation gets involved in the fight. How? Take the impact such a massive nuclear exchange would have on the environment as an example. Earlier it was mentioned that the 2019 study suggests that India's first volley of nuclear weapons would also be the first to send massive plumes of smoke into the skies. Don't underestimate the impact this secondary effect of a nuclear explosion could have. When you get around 100 to 250 nukes being exchanged between two countries, you end up with a climate catastrophe. Several sources highlight just how far-reaching that catastrophe could be. The study that explained what would happen if India and Pakistan went to nuclear war posits said war would result in 16.1 teragrams of black carbon being injected into the Earth's upper atmosphere. For context, a teragram is equivalent to 1 million kilograms, or about 2.2 million pounds. Multiply that by 16.1 and you get a staggering 35.42 million pounds of carbon being unleashed into the Earth's atmosphere in the space of a single week. And this assumes India and Pakistan only uses nukes with 15 kiloton yields. The teragram numbers almost double if either country has access to 50 kiloton weapons. All of this smoke would be rapidly heated by sunlight and would spend years floating around in the stratosphere. Global average temperatures, along with rainfall levels, would fall off a cliff, creating a climate crisis that impacts the entire world. Other resources suggest something similar. For instance, back in 2009, The Guardian suggested that even the smallest of nuclear conflicts could release around 700 million tons of carbon dioxide into the Earth's atmosphere. That's more than the UK produces per year, all going up into the atmosphere in less than a week in the case of a nuclear war between India and Pakistan. Though the soot that initially enters the atmosphere would mitigate the effects of this carbon dioxide, leading to the global cooling mentioned earlier, that soot would eventually give way to the point where global temperatures rise. Where would that leave the rest of the world? For several years after the war, everybody else would have to deal with a nuclear winter that has a devastating effect on agriculture. And once the soot clears and the planet starts heating up again, the increase in temperatures would be so severe that it would bring a rapid increase in ocean and sea level rises, devastating coastal communities. There are no winners either way. Let's hone in on the agriculture issue. The 2019 study says that the resulting nuclear winter has the potential to halt agricultural production the world over. The simple fact is that most crops either won't grow as they normally do or won't grow at all. Temperature, sunlight and rainfall reductions would combine to devastate farming and by extension result in untold amounts of food not being produced. That's where the impact on the rest of the world comes into play. The initial death toll, which could be as high as 150 million, would extend into the billions due to widespread famines. India would be hit hard, with its survivors no longer able to rely on the stable sources of food. China and the US also stand to lose hundreds of millions of people from their populations. The reality is that no country would be able to escape the after effects of the nuclear war. All will lose out. And this is assuming that only India and Pakistan duke it out on the nuclear front. There's a possibility, no matter how slim, that other nuclear powers could enter the fray. As ABC notes, India is loosely aligned with Russia, from which it receives defensive weaponry, and the United States. The latter has pledged support to India in the past and may feel obligated to bring its own nuclear weapons to the war. As for Pakistan, its closest strategic partner is China, which is yet another nuclear-armed nation. The odds suggest that none of those three would want to get involved in a nuclear war between India and Pakistan, not least because one of them doing so would draw the eye of at least one of the other two. But there's still the possibility, and if China, Russia or the US got involved, an already cataclysmic nuclear event would become truly world-ending. Of course, this is the worst case scenario. The good news is that it's very unlikely, albeit not impossible, that that's what's happening between India and Pakistan will devolve into nuclear war. For one thing, India has an official no first use policy. That means it won't launch nuclear weapons unless another nation attacks it with nukes first. That policy has seen changes over the years though. For instance, 2003 saw India reaffirm the policy, though it also added that a biological or chemical weapons attack could also trigger a nuclear response. In the decades since, several political parties have promised to revisit the no first use policy, especially when tensions with Pakistan were on the rise, though India hasn't officially changed its position yet. Pakistan, on the other hand, doesn't restrict itself to such a policy. For as long as Pakistan has owned nuclear weapons, it has refused to adopt a no first use approach. That's not to say that the country is itching to press the nuclear button. It knows that doing so would spell its doom. However, in a situation where it enters a hopeless conventional war against India, Pakistan may switch from using its nukes for deterrence to deciding to take India out with it. Its nuclear doctrine allows it to do just that, and if it does, the resulting chaos would spark a situation that the world should rightfully fear. But what do you think about the tensions that are rising between India and Pakistan right now? Would either nation ever resort to using its nuclear weapon stockpiles? Just how devastating would a nuclear war between the two be for the rest of the world? Share your opinions in the comment section, and remember to subscribe to the Military Show for more up-to-date news and information covering the latest developments in South Asia, Ukraine, and around the world.